Wrestling fans, a night to remember. Saturday, September 21st, the Picture Perfect Event Center, Jackson, Tennessee. Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame ceremony comes to Jackson for the first time ever. The Rivalry of the Ages presentation to Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee. Also, Handsome Jimmy Valiant, the Rock and Roll Express, Danny Davis, and tons more. Exclusive meet and greet at 3:30. Event to follow. Go to MemphisWrestlingHallOfFame.com to purchase tickets. Saturday, September 21st, Picture Perfect Event Center, 2310 North Highland, Jackson. A night to remember.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 2 of Retro Wrestling with Gene Jackson, live from the Retro Wrestling Archive, and I'm excited for today's show. I am joined by the founder and director of the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame. He is the owner, founder, and president of Power Pro Wrestling. He's a published author as well as one of the hosts of Talking Memphis Wrestling. Of course, you know who I'm talking about. It's got to be the one and only Mr. Randy Hales. Randy, how you doing, buddy?
Hello again, Gene. Good to talk to you, and we're all ready to go talking Memphis wrestling on this show today. Now, I'm going to interview you with one question, because you just said this is episode number 2 of this podcast. Am I correct?
That's correct.
I want to know who you went, because to me, that first guest is very, very critical, very, very important. It sets the tone. You wait, so I don't know when you did that first episode, but you waited probably for years, and now here I come in for this show. Who was number 1?
Number 1 was a man that you recently was on his podcast, Mr. Mike Needham.
Yeah. Who did he ever beat?
I interviewed him for an hour and a half, and I still don't know who he beat. I'm still trying to figure that out.
Now, that's another thing. I don't know. I might just go to bed, because you told me earlier when you contacted me here, you said, we'll go an hour. And then Mike Needham, who I don't know who he ever beat. What the hell?
Well, we were supposed to go 20. Mike will tell you this, and he put it in when he promoted it. I told him, I said, yeah, we'll go about 20 minutes. We got to talk about Memphis wrestling. And next thing you know, Randy, we've talked about Memphis wrestling for freaking hour and 20 minutes. Because, you know, as well as I do, man, you get to talking about Memphis wrestling, time gets away from you. And you know, odds are we may go longer than an hour, but I knew if I told you, hey, Randy, we're going to go 3 hours talking about Memphis wrestling, you'd be like, no, I'm good, Gene. I think I'm going to pass. So I told you an hour, and we'll hope for we'll see where the night takes us.
Hey, I listened to, this is several years ago before he died, but I listened to a Johnny Cash interview, and they were talking about a particular song, and the song was pretty short. It was like 2 minutes, 20 seconds. And the producer said, hey, that's too short. That's too short. You got to go longer. And he said, Johnny Cash said to him, when my song is done, my song is done. So I go with, when this interview is done, it's done. If it drags after 10 minutes, it's done. If it's 3 hours in, 4 hours in, 5 hours in, because we have a lot of stuff to cover. And we're going to talk night to remember, the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame, the Jerry Lawler, Bill Dundee rivalry for the lifetime. We're going to try to sell tickets. And your buddy Mike that you chose over me to debut this podcast, I'm sure that sold a lot of tickets. And Mike's a nice guy. He really is. And I like doing his podcast, and recently did it. Super nice guy, but pick him over me? What the hell?
Well, I didn't pick. Well, now let's be clear here, Randy. I've been trying to get you back on a podcast of mine for like 15 years now. You did Cheap Heat Radio back in when was that? Do you have any idea when that was?
Probably, I would guess it was in maybe 2009. That was the first. I didn't even know what a podcast was, and enjoyed doing it. And I shot an angle without you guys knowing I was shooting an angle.
That's what I was just about to say. I've been wanting to ask you this for years, Randy. So here's the deal. The question, we don't want to have to pull back the curtain all the way, because I know we're doing some work in here tonight in some level, I'm sure.
I'm not going to do no working.
Well, we're selling tickets. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, selling tickets.
But now, so let's kind of give a quick backstory to that. So in 2009, I'm doing Cheap Heat Radio. And let's be clear, this was in 2009. There was like 10 podcasts. It was like me, Colt Cabana, Mark Maron, and like 8 other people. There wasn't. Now everybody that's ever drawn a breath has a freaking podcast now. But back then it was just a handful of us. So it was easier to get guests. And I did a podcast with Jamie Dundee at like 9 o'clock in the morning, where he was very lucid and sober and thoughtful and informative, and people were really gushing over it. And then I did one with Steve Sharp, which was Ollie Stevens. And you reached out to me and said, hey, that was a great interview with Ali and a good interview with Jamie. And I was like, Randy, where you been, man? We need to get you on the show. Because at the time you had, as far as I knew, you had stepped completely away from wrestling.
Yeah, I had vanished.
Yeah, and nobody knew where you were. And I had been telling some buddies of mine for a while. I was like, you know who I'd like to get on Cheap Heat Radio? I'd like to get Randy Hales. They're like, well, you're not going to do that. Nobody even knows what Randy's up to these days, and he won't even talk about wrestling. So me and you had a couple of conversations online. Next thing I know, I've got you on the podcast. And when we talked on the phone, you're like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I want to get in here and talk about wrestling or not. And you were kind of apprehensive. And you were like, well, let's do it. So we did 2 or 3. We did 2 or 3. So yes, we did 2 or 3, and I was under the impression that you were kind of, unsure about this. But by the time we did like the 3rd one, you came in hot on that one. You were fired up on Brandon, and after I got done, I told my buddy Neil, I was like, I don't know if this turned into a work halfway through or if Randy was working me from the beginning. I said, but by the time the 3rd one got going, I realized that we're shooting an angle in that. Or using my podcast to do it, which I absolutely loved. But yeah, that was what I was going to ask. Was it that way from the beginning, or did it turn that way part of the way?
No, Brandon had asked me if I would do 4th in the Forest in Jonesboro, the big 4th of July thing. And so I said, yes. I said, and he said, you can do anything you want to do. Just however you want to work into it. I said, well, step number 1, I need to get on that daggum podcast. And I need to be mad at you, and I need to just go off on you. And I said, and I won't tell them what I'm going to do. I said, they'll ask about you, and I said, I'll go off. That was step 1. Step 2, Brandon, the morning show host, the Brandon Baxter show in the mornings on K-Fine Radio, East Arkansas Broadcasting.com, EAB.com. Anyway, so we did a little deal. My nephew, about 10 years old at the time, came up to the studio. I'm not there. And so Brandon produced the segment. And so he was taking requests for calls, and so he had did a few before then, and then he got Corbin asking for the thing. He said, what's your name, buddy? He said, Corbin Richardson. And Brandon said, Corbin Richardson? Said Randy Hales' nephew? I know you when you were born. He said, yes, sir. He said, Randy has gone crazy. He's just on this other radio show. So I incorporated it in. The radio show, he went nuts and threatened me and all kinds of stuff. And Corbin said, I don't know anything about that, blah, blah, blah. Then, so the next deal was that I called up the radio station going off, saying he was trying to turn my nephew against me. I said, all you're talking about is fireworks. I said, I'll set off a bomb on you 4th of July at the Crackhead Forest Park, blah, blah, blah. And so I was in Derek's corner, and got involved that way. It was fun, but yeah, I knew.
I love it.
It was using that to make the story make sense.
Oh, it was great because those were my most downloaded. Like those got thousands of downloads. Like those are some of the most downloaded episodes ever.
It's been 10 years. Hopefully we can get downloads here because once again, ORH has returned. And for the first time, I said this on my show the other day, and hopefully we have some people that watch your show, watch mine, and vice versa. But I'm sure there's some people that hadn't heard this. It was 30 years ago this year, on March the 4th of 1994, that I founded and created the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame. Very first person inducted, and we did that 2 days before on television. It was the late, great Sam Bass. The headliners of the night at the Mid-South Coliseum, when we had Don and Al Green, and we had just great people into the Hall of Fame. We did Tojo Yamamoto. It was just a great, great deal. But the last the two features were the Diamond Ring Cadillac Man's Buddy Monroe, and the second one was somebody that just 2 days before returned to Memphis TV for the first time in 5 years. We inducted Lance Russell in the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame. Jimmy Hart. I don't know how much editing you can do, but if you can edit somewhere here and find on YouTube and go ahead, you have my permission to do that. Play that YouTube video of Jimmy Hart performing Monday Night Memories.
I found a program stuck back in my drawer. It was faded, it was torn. I couldn't wait till I looked inside. Some are gone, some are still alive. I watched them every Saturday on TV. I couldn't wait till they climbed in the ring. Monday night memories are all I have to remind me of you. Jerry Lawler, he's the king. Austin Idol, superstar Dundee. Handsome Jimmy, he's so cool. Jimmy Hart acted like a silly fool. I watched them every Saturday on TV. I couldn't wait till they climbed in the ring. Monday night memories are all I have to remind me of you. Jackie Fargo said, put up your dukes. The girls thought the fabulous ones were cute. Sputnik Monroe, Don and Al Green, the Gilberts and the Funks, I thought they were so mean. I watched them every Saturday on TV. I couldn't wait till they climbed in the ring. Monday night memories are all I have to remind me of you. Jerry Jarrett, Tojo Yamamoto, when he died, it hurt me so. Eddie Marlin, Buddy Wayne, got a coffee, hope they never change. Lance Russell, they call Banana Nose. Dave Brown was his sidekick, everybody knows. Monday night memories are all I have to remind me of you. Monday night memories are all I have to remind me of you.
Several years, and then came back and did a couple when I was a GM at Lawler's Bar and Grill on Bill Street in Memphis. Kevin Lawler did a couple, and then we had the opportunity, and I'm sure you'll have questions. How in the world did this come up? How in the world is Terry Golden from KAW Wrestling, MCW Wrestling, and Randy Hales working together? How did this happen? And that's an interesting story too. So it's been 30 years since the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame was invented, and it has been almost 25 years. I guess you could say 24 right now, almost 25 that I've promoted a wrestling event of this magnitude. Even though, no, to make it clear, there's not wrestling matches on this. It's a combination fan fest and a celebration of Memphis wrestling, the tribute to Lawler and Dundee, the rivalry of a lifetime, and of course the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame. So that's exciting. So if you have any follow up to that, Gene.
Matches or not, it's a wrestling event, so it definitely counts. And man, time is such a strange thing, Randy, because can you wrap your head around the fact that it's been 30 years? I remember that I was a junior in high school in 1994 when the Hall of Fame started. And to think that I'm sitting here 47 years old talking to Randy Hales about that Hall of Fame that I was so excited about. And man, who more appropriate than Lance Russell, Sputnik Monroe? I mean, my gosh, you talk about Hall of Famers. I mean, that's definitely at that time, there was nobody more worthy. But it just blows my mind to sit here and think that we're 30 years away from that. And over on one of my other podcasts, the Retro Wrestling Review, where we're reviewing episodes from 1993, when we finished our episode that we recorded last Sunday that'll come out next week, we talked about the fact that on that episode, we had just saw Bobby Knight, which would be Sir Mo. We saw PG-13, who were only about 4 or 5 weeks into their debut on USWA. And then we saw Nightmare Danny Davis. It's like, these guys, we're sitting here watching these guys, and it feels like yesterday. And they're about to go into the Hall of Fame. It's like time just slips away. It slips away. It's crazy to me to think that much time has passed, but here we are.
I was 32 years old the night of Monday Night Memories. It was certainly one of the proudest things I am, and one of my favorite things I've ever done in wrestling. That and the Smoky Mountain USWA, and it's ironic that the Smoky Mountain USWA feud started with PG-13 and rock and roll as the focus of that thing. And we have both tag teams going into the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame.
Yes. So as a kid, my favorite tag team of the 80s, hands down, was the Rock and Roll Express. My favorite tag team of the 90s was PG-13. And I'm going to be able to travel to Jackson, Tennessee on September 21st and watch my two favorite tag teams of the 80s and 90s get inducted into the Hall of Fame side by side on the same night. I mean, that's pretty incredible.
And I'll give you a little scoop. I had my last TV that I booked and put together, written, whatever you want to say. We always said laid out. That writing part didn't happen. I didn't hear the word writing about a wrestling television show when Jerry Lawler went to the WWF and he heard the terminology there. Then he called me one day and said, "Hey, have you written TV yet?" I said, "What are you talking about, written TV?" You know, it's just a completely different situation. But the Hall of Fame ceremony and the tribute to Lawler and Dundee and the introductions, I'm not going to go too far out because everybody's smart, but you're not going to get the inside blow to blow. But this will be laid out as like I would have laid out or written, if you want to say that, a television show. There will be expect the unexpected. It'll be wild and woolly. It'll be surprising. It'll be a lot of fun, and it will be formatted. However, I have right in my hand the rough draft. Number 1, there it is, of that night in Jackson, Tennessee on September the 21st at the Picture Perfect Event Center there in Jackson, Tennessee. meet and greet starts at 4 o'clock, and then you will see the ceremonies start about 7 o'clock. It is a fantastic night, and we'll say this a million times. Can you go ahead and slip that poster in?
Yes, sir. Let's take a look at this right here. Now you look at how, and you can't see it great on this screen, but you can find it at MemphisWrestlingHallOfFame.com. It's on all over all of our Facebooks, myself, the podcast page, Randy's, the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame Facebook. Look at all these stars that are going to be there in Jackson, September 21st. It's unreal.
Now, the Jackson Coliseum, the old Oman Arena, it was Jackson Coliseum, then Oman Arena. The school bought it, so that's not available. This is a beautiful building that's been used for local wrestling. Tennessee Championship Wrestling and KC Gold has used that building. I'm excited about seeing it. You know, certainly one thing that I don't want to forget, because we're going to also give the opportunity to the Power Pro Wrestling Originals and the KW Originals, and they'll be recognized there, and there'll be probably trouble when we do that. You know, it's just a fantastic event. Folks, I'm sure Gene will put this poster up several times during this show, and it went away right there. I was going to tell you the QR code is right there. There you go. It's up there again. All you have to do is take your phone, point your camera, open your camera up, point it, and it takes you right to the place where you can get tickets. And folks, I'll give you another. I'll smarten them up again, Gene. I'll smarten you up. I'll smarten everybody up. I'm telling you right now that in probably 2 weeks, maybe 3, a big blitz of television advertising in the Jackson market and the radio as well, the top radio group in Jackson. I mean, Brandon Baxter cut the radio spot for me, as a matter of fact, and Michael St. John cut the television spot that you saw at the open of this show. But a lot of advertising in that market. Poster team, it's going to be big time. This show, there's no doubt in my mind, it will sell out. Here's the thing. If you watch this show, and if you listen to Gene talk about this show before, if you watch any of my shows and you've been excited about it, it's a month out, we got a holiday coming up. Don't wait, folks, especially the front row tickets, which is the platinum VIP tickets, and there's just 75 of those. That gets you into the meet and greet, to the ceremonies, to everything. That $75 gets you on the front row. I mean, Lawler, Dundee, Valiant, and there's so many more, and we'll talk about specifically the Hall of Fame people. This is a hard sell, Gene. This is where I'm trying to sell tickets. This is where I'm trying to motivate everybody. This is why I'm trying to do the Lance Russell that's still in me and sell some tickets. And speaking of Lance, I pick up this microphone right here. You know what this microphone is?
That is because I heard Mr. Nightmare Danny Davis remind us that is the ringside microphone that Mr. Lance Russell used to talk into every Monday night as he described the action in the ring at the Mid-South Coliseum.
And Danny said that a couple of times he grabbed his microphone and popped somebody. This is a pretty stiff microphone. No give to that at all. Stiff as Danny is. Anyway, I was stiff myself up. I knocked myself out. I don't know what you do if 10 minutes into this show I'm knocked out. That wouldn't be good, would it?
But you would be the first person to suffer a concussion on one of these podcasts here. I know that you know Randy just said he's giving you the hard sell, and he is. But me, I don't have any money invested in this show. But from a fan perspective here, folks, the Picture Perfect Event Center is a very nice venue, and it's a good sized venue, but it's not unlimited seating.
No.
And like Randy said, it will sell out. I know Jackson's a walk up town, as they call it, and a lot of people think, we'll just head down there that day. I honestly feel like you're not going to be able to just walk up and buy a ticket the day of the show. If you want to go to this, and I don't know how you couldn't, you want to scan that QR code and go ahead and get your tickets now. And like Randy said, why would you not go ahead and get the VIP? I mean, this is a once in a lifetime. I mean, people say once in a lifetime and people oversell things, but Randy, all honesty, can you ever imagine another scenario where this group of Memphis stars will ever be together in one place on a stage? Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee, the rivalry for the ages. It's going to be a once in a lifetime unique opportunity that this isn't going to come around again.
We're all getting old. We're all getting old. Just want to tell everybody that this will take place at the Picture Perfect Event Center at 2310 North Highland in Jackson, Tennessee. Let's go over some names before we get into the Hall of Fame, and then you have an idea for that we will do. You will see in the meet and greet that will take place at 4:00. You will see everybody that's there to be inducted into Hall of Fame. There is 10 people going into the class of 2024. They will all be in the meet and greet. You will also see Tommy Wildfire Rich, Dangerous Doug Gilbert, the Birdman Coco Ware. You'll see Downtown Good Looking Bruno, Cousin Carl Fergie in the house, the greatest referee in the history of mankind, Jerry Calhoun. Tom Pritchard's tag team partner is Pat Rose. He will be there. Rick Morton's son, a star of the NWA these days, Kerry Morton in the house. Tony Falk, LT Falk, Reggie B. Fine, Doug Basham. The Basham's in the WWF, the nephew of Danny Davis. He will be in the house. Also, Brandon Baxter of Power Pro Wrestling. You have, a vendor table from Shane Russell with very, very rare. Bring your pocketbook, bring your money, because those T-shirts of Lance Russell will be in the house.
Nice.
They will be there for sales. Very rare thing. Kick-Ass Wrestling Stars will be there. A bunch of them. You see all those pictures. Derek King will be there. Alan Steele, Blade, and of course, so many people. Like you look at that poster. Lawler worked Power Pro. Rock and Roll worked Power Pro. Dundee did. Spellbinder did. So did Handsome Jimmy Valiant, Tom Pritchard, Coco Ware, Reggie B. Fine, the Dirty White Boy. Just a lot of people on that poster. Tommy Rich and Doug Gilbert. A lot of people on that poster. And I'm still getting people calling and wanted to be added to that thing. This is the meet and greet. And again, in the meet and greet, not only do you have all the people that I just announced, you have the people that will be inducted into the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame. And what I've done my last two shows, we show the graphic and then we both talk about them, each one of them. So do we have time to go that route and go through all 10 of them?
We're going to do that. But if we can, I got a couple of questions for you. We're going to before we get to the Hall of Fame. Now, are you telling me that everybody who is pictured on this flyer is going to be in Jackson?
Yes.
Because I see a face on there whose name I haven't heard said.
I think there's one person that will not. When I sent the information to Terry, I said video by. He left that out. Jim Cornette will not be there.
Okay, all right. Fair enough. I wanted to clarify that one way or the other because I've had some people asking me, and I said
everybody besides him will. But we're working on a video. There will be several surprise videos too. That's worth the price of admission alone.
Hey guys, this is Wolfie D from PG-13. Check out my podcast, Live and in Color with Wolfie D, every Monday at noon. We're talking Memphis, we're talking ECW, WCW, WWF, everywhere that I've been. We even have some great guests, some Hall of Famers on the show with us. Every Monday at noon, Live and in Color with Wolfie D.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling, the podcast that's based on the old school, but can still help you find the good stuff from today. Jimmy Street and the Plastic Chic, Jared, are the undisputed tag team champions of the wrestling podcast world. From thought-provoking topics to superstar interviews to action figure expertise. This team does it all. And all they ask is, give me back my pro wrestling! Every other Thursday, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Before we get to the Hall of Famers, because this conversation is going to kind of lead into this, and you kind of alluded to this in the beginning. Now, I remember back when Power Pro Wrestling was going full tilt on Channel 5, and then you had KAW started up. They're in Memphis, and there's a natural rivalry there of, both perceived and literal. And, you guys were more or less kind of at war, was the perception of everybody. And then eventually it made its way to TV. It evolved into MCW. And how in the world in 2024 does Randy Hales and Terry Golden come together to co-promote a Hall of Fame event? It's one of those things that if I would have never... If I had to bet on it, or if somebody told me 20 years ago when I'm watching Power Pro, hey, these guys are going to work together on a show one day, I'm like, get out of here. That's not going to happen. How did we get here, Randy?
I'll tell you exactly how this happened. Exactly. First of all, the perception was the perception. It was not true at all. There was Power Pro people friends with KEW and vice versa. Terry Golden and I have never had an argument in our life. We were separate. I felt the two things. First of all, we were the established promotion because we were on Channel 5. We had, from the get-go, the Lawler, the Dundee, that sort of thing. We were established. Terry came, and I've told this story when Terry guested on my thing. Terry came before we had the first TV and wanted to work for me, and I loved him. I thought he had a great passion for the wrestling business, just a great passion. However, Bert Prentice, who had used Terry for a long time, they had a falling out. He had Lawler's ear and called Lawler and said, hey, Randy's going to hire Terry Golden, and can you get that stopped? And so Lawler, who wasn't my partner, but Lawler was the top star, and so he said, just hey, Bert says this guy can't be trusted, this, that. And I wouldn't have ever had the opposition I had with KAW if I would have hired Terry Golden. It wouldn't have ever happened.
Right.
And here's the thing. Terry was the big fan of ECW, and that's his company was just different. It was totally different than what we were doing. It was alternative for the wrestling fans. There was no heat at all. They did their stuff. We did ours. Then Lawler and I had a split, and so he went away. And then when he went to Terry, I lost my deal. And Lawler, you're gonna miss somebody once it's gone. And he missed being on my television, which was obviously the number one TV station in the market. And so he got us to work together. Not one argument. Now, how did this show get involved? Terry wanted to do, as he was talking to his crew at Kick-Ass Wrestling, and they all wanted to get together for a reunion show. It was going to be a KAW reunion show. Mm-hmm. And then one of the Power Pro guys, USWA guys, one guy that's actually going into the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame, Terry called him to book him and his partner. So you probably know where I'm going here. It's Wolfie D. And right. So he was explaining, say, hey, bring you in, do this in Memphis, blah, 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 and a reunion. And Terry and Wolfie said, hey, you need more than that. You need to call Randy Hales right now. So Terry called me and pitched a KAW Power Pro thing. Well, these companies been away for 24 years. And I know we're talking about Sputnik Monroe that started it in the 50s. But still, the glory days of Memphis wrestling are the 70s and the 80s. So I just got the idea. I said, hey, I'll tell you what we can do. And another thing Terry had said, he didn't have it named, and all he had, he said, I'd love for. I think he called me because he thought I could get Lawler, and he said I would like to have Dundee and Lawler walk to the ring for the last time. And I said, well, I'll tell you something different. Tell you what I think. I said, you know about my Hall of Fame? He said, oh yeah, you created it. And he said, yeah, I know about it. And I said, so let's do a Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame ceremony. Let's bring in some of the legendary talents in there. Let's do a fan fest. Let's do a Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame. And I said, let's do more than Lawler and Dundee just walking to the ring. Let's do, and then later I named it the Rivalry for the Ages. And that's kind of getting lost in the shuffle from the Hall of Fame. It really is, Gene. But I'm so excited about that. So we did that. Then I don't know if you could tell. Did you watch my show, Talking Memphis Wrestling, when I asked Terry?
Yes.
He had no clue.
You could tell he was genuinely taken aback, and you know, I watched that one and I was like, oh wow, Terry did not know that was coming. Sometimes people act like they don't know, but you can tell. But like, no, you could tell Terry was genuinely shocked, and
he cried. He teared up. Here's the thing. Because I had talked to him about that point, that podcast or that show was 3 or 4 weeks ago. We started talking in April and have hundreds of messages and phone calls, hundreds. And his passion for not only his company, but Memphis wrestling history. So I had in my head, and I wasn't going to smart him up because I'd have felt like crap if he'd have said no. And he is very sensitive, like obviously since we announced the Hall of Fame and now the poster we have his pictures on it, but the very first picture we had up, we had him on here. He said, I don't want it to be at all where they think the only reason I'm in the Hall of Fame is that it's my show. And he's will tell anybody, and it's so told me, the Hall of Fame deal is 100%. Every induction is me. Every induction, everyone. Now Terry adds another thing. Terry adds he lives in Jackson and has 4 businesses in Jackson that are very successful. And so I couldn't. Here's the thing: I couldn't do this without him, without a doubt. And I think he would probably say that about me too. It's a perfect marriage. I mean, it really is. It really is. So did that answer your question?
Absolutely. And you love to see it. You know, one thing I hate is when you hear there's heat, brother. I mean, when these guys like hang on to stuff from all these years back, and it's good to hear that was never really the case to start with.
I'm not saying with some people that ain't happening. This in that building in that snow in Jackson. That's why you can expect the unexpected. And I think because I had told you there's certain people, and don't get the rumors started. It is not Doug Gilbert. I'm not saying because you've already made the announcement. I'm a future guest on that show, and Doug and I are cool and all that. But there's somebody you've had a past relationship with in different ventures. I have flat out said I will not be on the show with him, and you know that. You absolutely know that. So some people, I'm not above holding grudges myself, Gene.
But what I'm saying is there's a lot of people who this event would, if this event wouldn't be taking place because they'd have been like, no, Terry started opposition against me back in the day, and I'm not going to work with him type is more what I'm referring to. You know what I mean? Like still mad that, but I don't think KEW, I mean, like you said, there was a spot for them. They presented wrestling in a totally different way. And yes, they took shots at you, but like you said, it was kind of rooted in an ECW style. And that's what ECW did. You know, they took shots at the other promotions, and what's Terry and him going to do? They're going to show up in Memphis and not take shots at the TV5 show.
I understood that absolutely. And also the old wrestling adage, if you're number one, if you're the most established, you don't respond to that. Just like when Randy Savage and his dad and brother had ICW, and they used to knock Lawler and Dundee and Jerry Jarrett and Tojo all the time. On the Memphis TV, they never responded because that would give them credibility at all. Now the television landscape so different, but a show that came on an hour or two before me and a show on Channel 30. Now I don't think it matters. I mean, I couldn't tell you who the number one station in Memphis is. I couldn't tell you. I don't think it's Channel 5 anymore. And I think one of the things, I know Channel 13 was the number one station in the market. Lance Russell and Dave Brown was at that TV station, and the wrestling was at that TV station. 1977, it moved to Channel 5, WMC TV. Guess what happened in months? Channel 5 became the number one station in the market, and it stayed the number one station for 30 years. And I think wrestling had a big deal to do with it.
And I think this is something you could definitely speak on to people that I don't think younger fans can really wrap their head around this. But the number of people back in the day in the Memphis market that was watching Saturday morning wrestling on TV5 and before that, Channel 13, as numbers that like a national company like AEW would kill for now on like Friday nights and Saturday nights. Like we're talking like huge numbers, right? I mean, just not nationally, but in the Memphis market. But I mean, I understand it's a different world. It was, there was 3 channels and all that jazz, but still,
it's impossible to do today. If you look at wrestling now in the WWF, they're making more money than they've ever had in history. The TV ratings of Raw, nowhere near what they were in the Attitude Era, but the revenue, and this is a business to make money without a doubt in the world. It's to make money, and that's the whole deal. And to talk about the rating back then, 75% of television that was turned on, 75% of them, most weeks, was watching TV5 wrestling. 75% of the homes in the Memphis, not just Memphis, the Memphis viewing area, Jackson, Jonesboro, Tupelo, Mississippi, 75%. There's never been a wrestling television program, and that's why, the Crockett's had a great territory, and Bill Watts had a great territory, and Georgia Championship Wrestling, and Florida, and Ron Fuller's 2 companies, just great stuff. Nobody had the numbers for the longer period of time as we did than Memphis wrestling. When I was just a kid, long before I had anything to do with it. It's just absolutely amazing. That's why people will show up. Absolutely. By the way, do you like my cool stuff? Here's a poster. Mark James with markjamesbooks.com. Make sure you come to Jackson. We have a bunch of vendor tables there. Mark's had a lot of books. He has put out a lot of books. He also recreates these posters. This was Sunday night, June the 19th, 1977. This is Jerry Jarrett debuted his company in March of 77. This is June 19th of 77. The main event is the lumberjack match, Jerry Lawler against the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. Also, Paul Orndorff against Plowboy Frazier, Phil Hickerson and Dennis Condrey against Tommy Gilbert and Tommy Rich, Bad Leroy Brown against Bill Dundee, Mike Stark and Rocky Johnson. Also, we had Jim Garvin and Ranamias, Sylvester Ritter. Tell everybody, tell the folks know who Sylvester Ritter is.
That is the Junkyard Dog, one of the biggest stars ever in the Mid-South region and the South in general.
He started as Sylvester Ritter. teamed with the Pro against the Exterminators. And I said Paul Orndorff and Plowboy Frazier. And we'll go ahead and go over here to Monday night, March the 4th, 1985. And we just had the opening about 3 or 4 matches. Then you had Randy Macho Man Savage and Lanny Poffo in the ring together with Handsome Jimmy Valiant against Adrian Street, Eddie Gilbert, and Mr. Wrestling. Then you had an AWA World Heavyweight title match, Jerry the King Lawler against Nick Bockwinkel, and the main event for the Southern Tag Team Championship on March the 4th, 1985, the Fabulous Ones against the Rock and Roll Express. I know it's not good television when you turn your back, but I don't have those cards memorized. But is that not amazing?
I have got several of those Mark James posters over on the wall in my next room over there. And folks, check out Mark's table. I've got a lot of his books. I've got several of those posters that Randy's showing right there. Check out his table at the Night to Remember. He's got some great stuff, and you know, even if you can't buy them all, but just flipping through there, looking at all of them, such great memories, you know, to remember those cards.
Now I'm going to do something. I did it for TV for the second time because we're talking about Mark James. You think I'm going to let you plug Mark James? I started it, I know, but you're going to plug Mark James' book, and we hadn't plugged mine. Are you really?
Hey, it's in my notes here. I promise you.
You know, the silly stuff is we're about a month left. I've got 3 books left. I don't think I have enough time to get books. I really don't. So go to Amazon. That's all you have to do is go to Amazon and search Living the Dream, Memphis Wrestling, the Randy Hales story. And folks, we don't have time to get into all the scoops, all the stuff, all the scandals, but in that book you can get it. So go to Amazon, search for that, or you can go to RandyHalesMemphisWrestling.com.
Well, let me say this, and this is an unsolicited plug here, and Randy we didn't talk about this ahead of time, and I didn't tell him I was planning on talking about it, but I did mention in the beginning about you being a published author. I have read that book cover to cover at least 3 times, and I pick out something new in it each time I've read it that I somehow missed the first time or didn't remember. It's a really great book. I highly suggest it, not just because Randy's on the podcast. Friends of mine will tell you I've been suggesting it. When people say, hey, recommend a good wrestling book, I've told people for years, check out Randy's book. There's so much insight into Memphis wrestling, and me being such a huge fan of Memphis wrestling, golly, there's so many stories. And you think you've heard most of the stories about Memphis. There's tons of stuff in there. I promise that you haven't heard behind the scenes of, you know, the Memphis days, the CWA days, the USWA, and especially the whole story of Power Pro from beginning to end. It's a fascinating book, Randy. You did a great job.
In the first chapter, I was in the process of planning to kill somebody. That's right. I opened the book.
That's right. He hooks you right in the beginning, and you gotta stick around and see how it turns out. So yes, definitely check that out. And if you're not going to have them in Jackson, then yes, jump on Amazon and order you one. It's definitely worth the read. And we're fixing to get to these Hall of Famers, but right quick, I want to address something you said earlier, because this is something that's kind of been hitting me since I've been doing this 1993 USWA podcast. You know, you mentioned that when you did the Hall of Fame back in 94, that, you know, the Sputnik Monroe days, the Jackie Fargo days, you know, that was kind of the glory days of Memphis wrestling, especially for, you know, guys like me, guys like you. And it was, but I'm starting to realize that for younger people who came along after that, this class that's going into the Hall of Fame, guys like PG-13 and Nightmare Danny Davis, and to them, the 90s was the glory days for them, because that's their childhood. That's where they grew up. They went to the Coliseum and they seen these guys, and it you know, to them, they're not really familiar with the 80s and 70s and 60s like some of us are. And so they look back on that equally as fondly of those times as we do, you know, back before that. So to me, that's really cool to know that, you know, that there's people who, to them, they remember PG-13 like, you know, some of us remember, you know, Don and Al Green and, people like that, so there's a lot of people really excited about this Hall of Fame. You can count me among them, but I've come to learn in all my fandom of retro wrestling, as the theme of this podcast is, or it seems all my podcasts are. The glory days of wrestling is subjective depending on when you grew up.
Just like the glory days, the young folks today, the glory days of NBA basketball is right now with LeBron James, with Steph Curry, with Kevin Durant. Same thing with football. Yep. Man, they will say that Patrick Mahomes. I lost the time. They would say right now, but then for older guys, we'd say Joe Namath, or we would say Al Green or Don Green or whatever. It's all about when you were born. It's all about when you were born.
Absolutely. But people feel so close to Memphis wrestling. I'd kind of like to get your perspective on this, Randy. I have a theory on this. I was a fan of all wrestling growing up. I watched WWF. I watched Crockett. I watched everything. But Memphis wrestling, I lived in North Mississippi. I was able to go to the spot shows. I made some trips to Memphis to the Coliseum. I watched it every week. And because of, some of the more real elements of it, I don't know, man, you just felt more connected to the wrestlers in Memphis. You felt more connected because I was able to go experience it live. There's just something about Memphis wrestling that feels more familiar to me. I don't know, like Hulk Hogan and those guys, they felt like cartoon characters, but and in the last 20 years, I've got a chance to meet and get to know some of these guys. But even before that, in my life, I grew up and I moved off different places, and I would go a year or two at a time sometimes, and I wouldn't see my family. I wouldn't see my friends. But, man, I could pop in an old tape and watch some old Memphis wrestling. It felt like I was home again. It felt like family, you know what I mean? It felt like there was familiarity. Guys like Lawler and Dundee and Jarrett and all these guys, man, you feel a connection to them. And I think that's what's going to make this event and events like it that's taken place over the years, all the different Hall of Fame ceremonies and nights to remember. You feel a connection to these guys. You feel like it's going to feel like a big family reunion in Jackson on this 21st. Do you agree?
That was a lot. We got to unpack that a little bit. That was a lot. And you're exactly
unloaded
right.
on you. I'm sorry.
That was exactly right. And here's the thing, and I mentioned earlier Mid-South Wrestling and Georgia Championship Wrestling in the Carolinas and Florida. They all had great territories, and they had boom periods. The Fullers had boom periods. There's a difference. Memphis had two things that nobody else had. It's a game changer. It's an absolute game changer. And that's why you feel the way you do. That's why I feel the way I do. It's a game changer. I think these two men that I'm going to mention now had more effect on a community or a territory or a region of the company than any other two wrestling personalities in the history of it. This is why it's different in Memphis, Gene. Memphis had Lance Russell and Jerry Lawler, and nobody else did. Bottom line, amen. Turn the show off if you don't get anything else out of this show right now. And you can name the Valiants and then so many more. We'll get into this class of the Hall of Fame right now, and Dundee, and I'm not making light of that. Certainly not making light of Dave Brown. But I'm telling you right now, we had Jerry Lawler and Lance Russell, and nobody else did. Bottom line, that explains it. That explains, I like telling this story. It was July 1994. July of 1994. Madison Square Garden, the most famous arena in the world. In July of 1974, at Madison Square Garden for the month, 19,000 people paid to see wrestling in New York City, the most populated wrestling city in the world. In Memphis, Tennessee, little old Memphis, Tennessee. 75,000. Now, you're thinking he's lying.
No,
He's lying.
I know where you're going.
Here's the thing. Memphis was a weekly territory. There was 4 Mondays in July. We ran 5 times. They ran once.
Yep.
But we still outdrew their ass.
Yep. I've been beating that drum on these podcasts for years, making a case. People want to argue. You always want to argue who's the bigger star, Hogan or Flair. And I will say to my dying day that Jerry Lawler outshines them all to me, because for all those years, and it wasn't just Jerry Lawler, it was a cast of everybody, but at the root of it, in the main event, most Monday nights, Jerry Lawler made people interested enough to come pack that Coliseum for all those years, week in and week out. I don't think Hogan could have packed Madison Square Garden every Monday night for 20, 30 years. I don't think Flair could have packed them into the Charlotte Coliseum every Monday night for year after year after year. Do you agree with that?
And a lot of territories ran monthly. A lot of them ran bi-weekly. Just their major towns. And there was some territories that Dallas ran weekly. There was exceptions to the rule. I think Bill Watts ran towns twice a month, but had some towns like New Orleans, he ran weekly, every Monday night. Monday nights, just think of it. We ran Monday nights. Back in the day, New York ran Monday nights at Madison Square Garden. In New Orleans, they ran Monday nights. In Birmingham, Alabama, they ran on Monday nights. That was part of this territory. This territory, when Nick Gulas and Roy Welch had it, Monday night wrestling in Memphis every Monday in Birmingham, Alabama. Maybe Memphis would draw 11,700 people, but Birmingham would draw almost 7.
Yeah.
So that's almost 20,000 people within 200 miles of each other. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Folks, get smartened up on Memphis wrestling. Go to Jim Cornette and his book, and I got it right here. One of our weekly towns is Louisville, Kentucky. Do you have this book?
I have that book right over there in the
United Gardens at JimCornette.com. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. And now I'm moving around so much, I'm out of focus. So we're going to do a white balance live, as live can be, right here. See if that fixes it.
There he is.
How about that?
All right.
You have a TV person in the house.
That's right.
Moving around is what happens. I get excited.
Nothing wrong with that. We're all excited. So let's get to it right now. Let's go ahead. There you see the official Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame. Now, you mentioned one of the things that made Memphis Wrestling special, one of the things that made it stand out, made it unlike any other territory in the world, is we had Lance Russell. Well, in Jackson, Tennessee on September 21st, no, we can't have Lance Russell, but we are going to have a Russell hosting. Randy, tell us who our hosts are for the evening.
The host for the evening is Power Pro Wrestling's and the current morning show host in the Jonesboro, Arkansas market, Brandon Baxter, and his tag team partner to host the show will be the son of Lance, Shane Russell, who does a great job speaking, fantastic job. I don't know if you've thought about it, but you should get Shane on your podcast because he's
I'm definitely going to try. I'm definitely going to try. And I'm looking forward to meeting. I've never got a chance to meet Shane. And honestly, can you believe in all these years, I've never actually met Brandon Baxter. So I'm hoping to get a chance to shake his hand and say hello to Brandon and Jackson as well.
They will both be there. Absolutely. So again, I said earlier that I've first drafted this thing. And so we have put in an order, you kind of move things around, and this right now, subject to change, this is the order. Now somebody might get there and say, I have to go on first, or somebody say whatever they say. Somebody might say, I just have to get out of here early, and this is the plan right now for the order of the induction. So when you put one up, I'll start, you finish, then you pause, then we go to the next one. Okay.
All right. So the order that you said before we went, that's where we're starting.
Yes.
Here we go.
The first person, and it's appropriate. And this is another guy is emotional about Memphis wrestling, and he's emotional about Jackson, Tennessee. He grew up in the Jackson, Tennessee area. He had a great career later on OVW wrestling and trained so many people, including Randy. Or there's so many people that you can't even tell them. But I'll say he trained Randy Orton and John Cena. By God, that's enough. They're both relevant in 2024, and Cena's retirement tour is next year. But so excited to have Danny Davis, Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame. He will be inducted by his nephew, who had a hell of a run he wrestled as a young man in USWA, hell of a run in OVW, and is part of the Bastion Brothers in the WWF. The 224 class opening inductee is Nightmare Danny Davis from Jackson, Tennessee, Gene.
I am so excited about that, man. I was such a huge fan of the Nightmares. I saw them in Memphis. Like I said, I grew up in North Mississippi. I went to Columbus, Mississippi to Continental shows and saw the Nightmares. Was a fan of Danny when he went singles. And my weekly podcast, the Retro Wrestling Review, the USWA podcast, my two co-hosts, one's Richard Mulliken. The other is Josh Briley, who is also a nephew of Danny Davis. So those guys are coming too from P3 Radio. We're all going to be hanging out with Uncle Danny, as we refer to him on our show. Super excited to see Danny Davis going into the Hall of Fame. It's
Danny really was on my show. Danny in 2018 or 19 sold OVW. Doesn't keep up with wrestling. When I called him, he was shocked. He is not going to fly from Clearwater. He's going to drive. He has family there and make a family visit out of it. He was absolutely thrilled to death about that. And go out back to my podcast, my video cast. Go to the Randy Hales channel on YouTube, youtube.com/@RandyHales. Click on the live tab and you'll see that show. The week before, Spellbinder, we'll talk about him in a minute. He did a great job. This past week, Danny, we had some technical issues, lagging a little bit. Danny hadn't done a podcast ever. And certainly, he obviously didn't have the best internet in the world either. So we had some technical issues, but the show is great. So
Danny's living it up down in Florida, and he looked at he had his beach shirt on. You could tell that Danny's living the life down there. He looked good.
First inductee, Danny Davis, to the Memphis Hall of Fame, and now number 2. Representing the tag team that was named several different names throughout the years. Men on the Mission was one with Big Mabel. Well, in September the 21st in Jackson, Tennessee, Bobby Horn, Sir Mo, will be inducted in the Hall of Fame. I'm excited about this. I am fired up. On Mondays, I do Power Pro Wrestling Watch Along. He was involved in a team at that time called the Regulators, and they were great. They did a fantastic job, and Bobby was the lead of the team and was great. I'm watching him every Monday now. The guy is a great teacher. He lives in Texas now. He is just great. He's going to be inducted by one of his wrestling school students. Just a hell of a talent that very much deserves to be in the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame. Very much deserves to be, and he will. Sir Mo, Bobby Horn. Follow him on Facebook, folks. He has a great knowledge, just a good dude, and we welcome him, Gene, to the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame.
I'm excited to see him going there too. Right now, we're covering March 1993 on my USWA podcast. The Harlem Knights have just shown up. They've been on there for a few weeks. And I don't think those guys always get enough love that what they deserve. I mean, something that people don't talk about enough, Randy, and I don't know if everybody realizes this. These guys debuted in Memphis on TV. This is the first television they ever did. They show up in March of 1993. They're working on USWA TV. They come in, they have their first match on television against a couple of the enhancement guys. They go directly into a feud with Jeff Jarrett and Jerry the King Lawler. By May, they come in March. By May, they're getting a WWF tryout as Harlem Knights. By June, Men on a Mission are in the WWF, man. These guys are on WWF TV within 3 months, which is pretty incredible. So, yeah, man, definitely deserve to be in the Memphis Hall of Fame.
They didn't waste any time at all. Hey, crank the music up as we go to the next inductees. One of the greatest babyface tag teams in the history of wrestling. Both started their career in Memphis, Tennessee. Rick Morton, Robert Gibson. In 1983, Jerry Lawler had taken over the book, and he needed an alternative to the Fabulous Ones, who were the top babyface tag team and the best. Let's face it, the Fabulous Ones had the best run of any tag team in the history of Memphis wrestling. However, when you look at the total career of the Rock and Roll Express, record business everywhere they went, record business for Bill Watts, record business in the NWA for Jim Crockett Promotions. It changed wrestling. They changed wrestling. Ricky Morton was so daggum hot, it wasn't even funny. These guys are great talents. Inside baseball, Rick Morton is one of the best sellers in the history. That was one of his roles, make the hot tag to Robert, because Ricky was a smaller guy. Just a great team. I mean, I can't tell you. One of the matches, if you ask, and I'm sure you've seen it, Gene, one of the matches that I'm most proud of doing the commentary from was in, I believe, let me think, it was in 84, I'm pretty sure in 84, it was the Rock and Roll Express in Memphis at the Mid-South Coliseum against Randy Macho Man Savage and Leaping Lanny Poffo. Oh, yeah. And that is the match where I say, oh my God, Ricky Morton through the table. I think that's the first table breaking in the history of wrestling. So much. I just played a show last week on Talking Memphis Wrestling, The Nightmares. Danny Davis was a part of it. They wrestled the Rock and Roll Express, and that was a great match as well. This is, man, how can you top what we've done so far? Danny Davis opening up Sir Mo, and then the Rock and Roll Express. The Rock and Roll, Gene, I'm getting blowed up. So
I mean, the babyface tag team of all babyface tag teams. And folks, if you can find a better tag team feud than the Rock and Roll Express versus the Midnight Express, pick your version, Bobby and Dennis, Bobby and Stan, whichever one. Those guys, and they hold up to this day. You know, there's some wrestling that people, you show them to young people and they're like, oh, there's not enough action. You can pick a Rock and Roll Express versus Midnight Express match from Mid-South up through WCW into Smoky Mountain all over the years, and they all hold up to this day. Matches like you mentioned, that match with Savage and Poffo.
Great.
Take a current fan that is watching AEW or WWE and show them that match. It holds up. Them against the Nightmare.
It not only holds up, it surpasses without a doubt. And I'm excited that the Rock and Roll and Ricky lives up in the Smoky Mountains. Robert lives, I think, does he live in Mississippi or Alabama or Florida?
I know he did. I'm not sure where he's at right now. I've kind of lost track of him.
Maybe Atlanta.
That sounds right.
I am thrilled to say, and I think I tipped it off a little earlier, I think this is appropriate, that Kerry Morton, the son of Ricky, who is great in the NWA, a former NWA World Junior Heavyweight Champion. He's, I think, a tag team champion now. Kerry will induct the Rock and Roll Express in the Memphis Wrestling Hall.
Nice. That's awesome. Looking forward to that.
This next guy we talked about a little later. Real happy with this from KW and MCW Wrestling. September the 21st in the town that he lives in, Jackson, Tennessee, at the Picture Perfect Event Center on Highland Drive in Jackson, Tennessee. Terry Golden will be inducted into the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame. And I can tell you, the more I talk to Terry, I've talked to Terry 3 times tonight, the enthusiasm and love, I wouldn't say that it surpasses mine, but man, he's right up there. He loves it. Where I'm a Jerry Lawler guy, he's a Bill Dundee guy. Coke and Pepsi, folks. Coke and Pepsi. I'm a Bill Dundee guy too, but you ask me, I'm a Lawler guy, and everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. Terry Golden certainly deserves this.
Oh yeah,
and that's why we're doing it.
Watching that live podcast of yours, when you said I've been talking to your kids about the event, about I've got them booked for the event, and that look on his face, he kind of panicked for a minute, like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? And he said, I know they're not going to wrestle. And just like you said, that genuine emotion that come with it washed over him when you told him that he was going in the Hall of Fame, man, it makes you feel good. You love to see it. And man, I don't know Terry Golden, but I'm proud for him. I would love to get him on this podcast and hear the backstory of KEW and talk to it, because I watched and enjoyed it at the time, and just very deserving and just very cool to see it.
Now Terry's sons are a little bashful. I don't know if we can talk them into doing it.
Oh, really?
They love their dad, but going in front of a crazy wrestling crowd, we'll just see. But that's the plan written on the paper. Terry Golden in the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame. And the next one will be interesting as well. We go up to Tennessee as well for Tony Anthony, the Dirty White Boy. Everybody remembers. Beautiful ballet. Oh my goodness. And he was just a rough, tough customer. We saw him as the Grapplers with Lynn Denton. We saw him as the Dirty White Boy. We saw him in Continental with a great feud with Tom Pritchard. He's a great talent, a super talent, and he will be inducted into the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame by Dangerous Doug Gilbert. Dirty White Boy Tony Anthony, September the 21st, 2024 in Jackson, Tennessee. By gosh, get your tickets now and welcome White Boy to the Hall of Fame. Gene?
Man, this was another one I was excited to hear. Again, being a Memphis and Continental fan, I definitely saw, Dirty White Boy on Memphis shows. I went to Columbus and saw him on the Continental shows. I saw a lot of matches with him and a man we're going to be talking about here shortly. And I was really excited to be able to say that I was going to be there when this man went in. And for the man that I do a podcast with every week, Dangerous Doug Gilbert, for Doug to be the one inducting him, and that being his former tag team partner. They were USWA tag champs. Just, man, it just fits.
Doug is a member, and his entire family, his brother, his father, all members of the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame. And certainly Doug still big contact with the White Boy. He's the one that made the phone call for me. I think he's the Dirty White Boy is the one guy that I hadn't talked to. And Doug took care of it.
And Doug's been talking to him. He's going to be coming on Dangerous Conversations with Doug Gilbert and doing a podcast with us before the Hall of Fame to talk about it. He's excited about it, and I'm looking forward to getting a chance to talk to him and hear, what this means to him, because I know it means a lot.
One of my guys that I really love, we talked about Danny Davis being a great trainer, a fantastic trainer. Another guy that's trained some of the greatest talent in the world is Tom Pritchard. Tom Pritchard, Heavenly Body. Tom Pritchard, the brother of WWE executive Bruce Pritchard. He first came into the Memphis territory as a young babyface in 1983. His interview style, especially at the beginning, was a lot like Roddy Piper. He is just a great wrestler, great worker, tremendous talent, and a nice, fun guy. And I'm so fired up, real excited. Again, he was a teacher of great talent, and he's certainly a very deserved welcome to the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame. Gene.
Man, he's the guy who, like you said, just like Danny Davis, whose fingerprints are going to be all over the business for decades to come with all the great talent he's trained that are going to continue to go out and share his teachings with the next generation and the next generation. Just a really great guy. And man, I can't tell you how many messages I get from people who absolutely love and remember the old Texas versus Tennessee feud in the USWA. You know, that was a big time favorite amongst a lot of fans, and people still talk about it this day. And of course, Tom Pritchard and Eric Embry right at the root of that.
And it didn't draw a dime. Didn't draw a dime. I'll tell you a promotional feud that drew a dime, and that's Smoky Mountain in the USWA. That drew the money. Tom certainly just very deserved member, and I can't wait to see Tom. It's been several years. I saw him at a Burt Prentice show in Jackson several years ago. He's just so cool. So excited about having him. So we go to the next slide. From the Hood, JC Ice, Sir Whoopi D, PG-13, Jamie Dundee, Kelly Warren Wolf. JC Ice, he's all over the internet. He breaks the internet, man. We got to have somebody on the mute button when they do that acceptance speech. I can promise you that for sure. Whoopi has a podcast of his own that I listen to, and I've been a guest, I think, more times than anybody. They'll tell you PG-13 is a RH team. They were hired by Jeff and Jerry Jarrett, the person that took them from an underneath heel team to a main event babyface team, was the owner, founder, and president of Power Pro Wrestling, ORH himself, and I'm proud of that. A lot of people said they're too small. Everybody, there's just so much negative, so much negative. As a matter of fact, Jerry Lawler told me one time, say, hey, Randy, everywhere I go out, said my buddies tell me that PG-13 are so small and they shouldn't be on the cards. I said, do they pay money to come to the Coliseum on Monday night? They go, no, they don't come to the matches. I said, have they ever come to the match? No, they don't come to the match. I said, I could give them two shits. He said, well, I don't know if you're going the right direction. I said, you'll come up to me in 3 weeks and tell me what kind of direction I'm going to. Right then, they were wrestling Perry Saturn and Cronus, the Eliminators, if you remember that.
Yeah, absolutely.
94, and that's what got them going. And that was part one of the plan to elevate them into main event guys. So I said, come back to me in 3 or 4 weeks and tell me what happened. He says, you were right. I said, damn right. And I said, if we can go in with Tommy, do a program with Tommy and Doug, and I'm going to be writer, and then after that, I'll be writer. I knew where I was going to them, and they were a handful. They really were, but they were both great, and great chemistry, young, modern gimmick. I'm real proud of that. My baby face, Lawler was not around much, so
yeah.
So if you looked at the baby faces, I would say the number one single baby face was Brian Christopher. The number one babyface tag team was PG-13, and sometimes we put Brian on top. Sometimes we put PG-13 on top. In the Smoky Mountain USWA thing, we had no choice to put them on top. No choice. I mean, even with Lawler on the card, he was underneath them because he had to be. And he knew it. He never bitched about that. He knew it. Because we were going to go heat at the end of the night, and we wanted to end with heat, and we weren't ending with heat in his match. And it was just something new. So excited about that.
man, they were so relatable. You know, they started out as great heels, but man, the fans really took to them, and they had watched them. You know, they started out together on Memphis TV, and fans had watched them come along. And I did an interview with Wolfie just a couple of months ago, really talking about the development of, you know, PG-13 from the very beginning, and Wolfie was very adamant in making sure that people knew that, you know, hey, Randy Hales is the one that believed in us. Randy Hales is the one that pushed us and insisted, you know, like, no, we're gonna do this, and it's gonna work, and it did. And so I know it means a lot to those guys to go in there, and I know it means a lot to you to put them there. So,
and you know, some people will say, "Oh, fake wrestling," and said, "Who gives a shit? A real Hall of Fame is the Baseball Hall of Fame or the Basketball Hall of Fame." These wrestlers, as you saw Terry cry, and you saw how emotional Danny Davis was. And a couple of weeks ago, I had the Spellbinder on my podcast, and he was emotional as well. It means a lot. Sure, people are going to complain about any Hall of Fames, and I've got people that say, why isn't the Fabulous Ones? Well, I called them, and they said no. What do you do?
Can't put it any more plainer than that, folks.
We called Sid Vicious, and he's booked that weekend.
Yeah.
Would love to do it. And he will be in eventually. But if somebody says no, and Sid didn't, he said no due to his bookings, obviously, but I wouldn't want somebody to no-show on me, and he was doing the business thing. But I'm excited about that, and it means a lot. There's so many that's just so important to me. Still working on who's going to do the inductions. Remember, folks, expect the unexpected with Randy Hill's booking. Man,
and just to comment on one thing there, Randy, because
sure.
I see a lot of that online and read a lot online too. Like, why not this person? Why not that person? This isn't the last Hall of Fame induction. You can't induct everybody at the same time. Like, there's got to be people for future events that, you know, they'll get there or they won't. But it's like, people are like, well, why not there? Like I said, why not the Fabs? Why not Sid? Why not Miss Texas? Why not? Well, we'll get there in due time. But my God, this thing can't last 5 hours.
I couldn't find Miss Texas. I tried. There's just so many, because I can tell you more than anybody. If you pick a person to be in charge of the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame, you got the person right now, because I know the history. I appreciate it. I started the thing, and even though last couple of years Kevin Lawler has helped me, but if there's anybody that needs to be vetoed, that I think absolutely not. And I even been questioned by some of mine, and Kevin wrote a thing on Facebook, and he's right. What does Johnny Dotson had asked this question, what does it take to be in the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame? I took that as a negative question. Yeah. And Kevin replied in a great way. He said, first of all, they draw money, 100%. Second of all, they have a legacy people remember for years. That's absolutely 100% true. They had a character or a gimmick that was memorable. People still talk about today. And then the last thing he said, their total career, where they ended up. So we put Mick Foley into the Hall of Fame, Kurt Angle in the Hall of Fame, Scott Steiner in the Hall of Fame. They started the career without coming to Memphis. Would they have their chance? Would they have been seen by WCW? Would they have been seen by the WWF? So I'm adamant and will defend that.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories, whether it's Jamie Ward with Georgia 81, Roman Gomez with the UWF in 1986, or Gene Jackson covering Memphis in 85. 3 projects going on right now over there at Regional Wrestling. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. Bob goes back in time each and every week, covering not just his career, but countless stories and interactions with hundreds of wrestling names spanning his 2 decades in the business. But that's not all. You can also check out the Pro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Pro Resu, Mr. Dan Ginnity. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met, from Apple to Spotify, Pocket Cast, and beyond. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to our social media guys for all the latest goings on here at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Plus, I'm constantly adding old school video clips and pictures from throughout wrestling history. You can follow us over on X, formerly Twitter, at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. And why not subscribe to YouTube.com/Wrestling Grenade. So if you're looking to support that next up-and-coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia.
And a good friend of mine is the next slide. He's Michael St. John. He's a member of the Alabama Radio Broadcasting Hall of Fame. He was the voice of the debut wrestling video of Hulk Hogan. He was the voice of the Kamala video. Kamala, the Ugandan giant. Kamala. Michael St. John loves wrestling. Michael St. John co-hosted several times USWA Wrestling. Classic voice, classic guy. Currently one of my co-hosts of Talking Memphis Wrestling. Welcome to the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame, Michael St. John.
Now, this is another guy I was excited to see go in there. And this is something you probably don't know, Randy. As I sit here right now talking to you from Gadsden, Alabama, I'm not that far away from Michael. And I have listened to Michael on the radio around here for years because he's just up the road from me. So I've heard him, not only seen him on TV for years in wrestling, I've heard him on radio stations around the state of Alabama. And
is it Fun 97? Is that what it is?
That's right, Fun 97
from Arab, Alabama.
Arab, that's right,
right near Huntsville, Alabama. Michael St. John coming into the Hall of Fame. He will be there again. My co-host on Talking Memphis Wrestling, along with Pat Trammell.
But he's good at what he does. He's a great announcer, but he's just a good guy. You know what I mean? He's a guy that deserves it. He appreciates it. It means a lot to him. And you like, just like I said with Terry Golden and all these guys, you really love to see that because I know it means a lot to him. And he's just a good dude and super talented at what he does.
He will be inducted by my other two co-hosts in the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame. And that will be Pat Trammell from Birmingham, Alabama. And
another guy right up the road from me.
Chris Ellis from Jonesboro, Arkansas, now living in Southside, Arkansas, as the assistant superintendent of the Southside School. They'll be there. Michael, I'm just thrilled to death, and he's thrilled about it too. Hey, I'm doing one induction because I will let these guys choose who inducts them. Now, here we go with our next guy, and he chose me. This is a guy I've known since 1993. It's the same deal on the USWA show, the same year you're spotlighting right now. Harry Del Rio. He was the Spellbinder. He was Streak. He was Shock. He was all kinds of things, but he is a tremendous, tremendous talent. He was on my show a few weeks ago. He loves wrestling. He's so excited. His wife is excited, and man, she'll blow everybody away too. He's entertaining. He looks like $1 million. He was Brian Christopher's best friend. If you look at the entire Power Pro Wrestling run, and on the Spellbinder interview, I showed the very first match in the history of Power Pro Wrestling. He wrestled Paul Diamond. I showed that match a few weeks ago. It's in the archive. It's Randy Hales' YouTube channel, youtube.com/@RandyHales. Click on live and look for that show. We showed that match, him and Paul Diamond, that opened up the Power Pro Series. And at the end of the Power Pro Series in 2001, the very final match, Gene, was Spellbinder against Jerry Lawler.
Oh, wow.
And the person that came out for the last shot of the show to count to 1, 2, 3 was me. ORA. Eddie Hales, the owner, founder, president of Power Pro Wrestling. I'll induct the Spellbinder. Thoughts on the Spellbinder?
I'm a big fan of the Spellbinder. I remember when he came into the USWA, and I think it's kind of fascinating to me that, you've got Danny Davis, who is, a guy who was a huge part of establishing the WWF developmental system, trained, like you said earlier, all these big names. Tom Pritchard's trained so many developmental guys. And as y'all have talked about on your show, the Spellbinder was the very first ever developmental talent for the WWF. Yeah, so that's pretty apropos that they're all going in together.
Yeah, it's just a great thing, and I'm excited about this. Now I'm going to get set before you put up the slide. Don't put it up yet. I came rolling into Memphis, TWA. Tell all the ladies, handsome Jimmy's on the raid. Put it up there. I'm a rocker. I'm a roller. I'm a little funky too. I was raised by a gypsy. Old handsome is cool. The boogie woogie man in the Carolinas. But if you get to Memphis, Tennessee, you get to Nashville, Tennessee, you get to Louisville, Kentucky, Lexington, Kentucky, if you get to Evansville, Indiana, if you go to Jonesboro, if you go to Jackson, if you go to Tupelo, wherever you go, Clarksdale, Mississippi, wherever you go, Forest City, Arkansas, wherever you go, he is handsome Jimmy Valiant. He will be the final, unless he has to go catch a plane, folks. He will be the final inductee of the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame. What a impact, what money this guy drew. In 1977, Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee just finished from July to October their great feud that ended up with Bill and Beverly Dundee losing their hair. So went away. Then what happened? But Lawler retired. Lawler said he was going to become a singer. Then they had a tournament for the Southern Heavyweight Championship. A newcomer, but it was an impressive newcomer because he had co-held the WWF World Tag Team titles with Luscious Jimmy Valiant. Handsome Jimmy and Luscious Johnny with Captain Lou Albano was WWF. I didn't misspeak. It was WWF, the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. Tag team champions came in. The Coke bottle, the Mercy Daddy, just so much, so classic stuff over the years. Got so hot as a heel, they switched him babyface and did tremendous amount. The people switched him babyface because he was cool. He was excited. He is in his 80s and he'll come rolling into Memphis. TWA, tell all the ladies, handsome Jimmy's on the way, man. There's nothing like him. He's drawing nothing but money. As the Boogie Woogie Man in the Carolinas, nothing but money. Just absolutely nothing but money. Super thing. It's been a long time since he's been in Jackson, Tennessee, folks. A long time since Handsome Jimmy. Handsome, another regular co-host or guest of mine on Memphis Wrestling, Talking Memphis Wrestling, is my friend Bo James, the king of Kingsport. And Bo modeled a lot of his career, even called himself Handsome Jimmy, Handsome Bo James. He called himself Handsome Bo James. And they worked in East Tennessee on all kinds of shows together and big friends. And so Handsome wanted Bo to induct him into the Hall of Fame. And that's how I envision ending, and then the music will play, and Handsome will then wave to the crowd and boogie woogie out to the crowd, and maybe I'm going to tell him where you're sitting, and I'm going to tell him, see that Big Gene Jackson, go get him go give him a kiss right on his lips and stick the tongue in.
Oh my!
Tongue stuck in by Handsome Jimmy Valiant. So that's the last inductee of the 10, and I think we did do. You gave us plenty of time to do this, and if that don't motivate
Folks,
people to come to
I don't know what more you want, man. I don't know. I mean, Handsome Jimmy, people ask, how do you describe charisma? Handsome Jimmy. That's what charisma is. That man is oozes it, and his energy is infectious. You know what I mean? Like you can't sit out there and watch a Handsome Jimmy interview or Handsome Jimmy match and not have fun and just sit there on your hands, man. You're gonna get into it. And you talked about that you set this thing up just like a TV show. You booked it like a wrestling card. You started strong with Nightmare Danny Davis. You ended strong with Handsome Jimmy, and you got all the great people in between. Like I said, I don't know how you could book it any stronger, Randy. This is going to be amazing.
Going to be amazing, and again, I have reasons for everything, because I didn't just sit down and write this out without thinking. The first thing, Danny, a hometown guy that hadn't been there a long time. That's where I went with him first. Then I went with Mo. Then I went with Rock and Roll, and I didn't want to do the 2 tag teams in a row. So I went with the Rock and Roll, then Terry Golden, then the White Boy, then Tom Pritchard, then PG, then Michael, then the Spellbinder, inducted by me, and then Handsome Jimmy Valiant. And I think it just makes sense. And there's, as you can probably read behind the lines, some foolishness. And let me see which actual paper I have. Here it is. So basically, I have a big news for you here. I've announced it on my show too. At 6:55 p.m. Central Standard Time, the PA announcer introduces country music recording artist, son of Pat Rose, Camden Smith, to sing our national anthem.
Nice.
At 7 o'clock, straight up and down, the PA announcer introduces Brandon Baxter with music, who introduces Shane Russell with music, preview the Night to Remember, Hall of Fame, special tribute, Rivalry of the Lifetime, blah, blah, blah. Host says every Hall of Fame inductee have history with both Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee, and we will see that later. We have many other legends. We would like to ask many of the other legends come to the stage right now. So people like Tommy Rich and Doug Gilbert, people like Coco Ware and Downtown Bruno and Jerry Calhoun and Carl Fergie. By the way, Carl Fergie will be there as well. Tony Falk, Ridgeby Fine, Derek King, Brandon Baxter, and others, including Pat Rose, come to the stage. I've tried as much as possible to avoid people being inducted in the Hall of Fame, but we had to get a little bit of it. So Bill Dundee comes out, Jamie comes out with him. Here comes Jerry Lawler, Kevin Lawler comes out with him. Expect the unexpected. We also played the classic June 6, 1983 Loser Leave Town music highlights with Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee, the best wrestling match I ever saw. Then there's some bitches going on, so we end up showing the 1985 Loser Leave Town from Lawler in Dundee. We show that. And then I am predicting there's some bullshit that happens at that point. And then I think what'll happen, every extra person that's on that stage except Jerry Lawler or Bill Dundee, I have a feeling that we have Bruno there, and we have William Gibson there, and we have Jerry Calhoun there, and I'm there. So they can't say Lance not going to be there. Shane can't say, Eddie, we need some help out here, but they can say, Randy, we need some help out there, and I'll kick all their asses out. Then comes a special presentation. I'm not going to give that away. A special presentation to Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee at that point. And then the music play, they leave, people go crazy. We reset the show. Then we bring out all the KAW, and there's more of them than there is Power Pro. The issue with Power Pro is so many people on this list also was a big part of Power Pro. Some of them had wrestled for KAW too, but I don't want them out there doing the thing, so they're going to outnumber us. But then we bring the KAW crew, then the Power Pro crew, and we do that deal, and have that little smize. After that, hoping this go on the air at 7:45 to 7:50. See, I don't play.
There you go.
I don't play the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame ceremony.
And we're working on perhaps getting this streaming, right? I know there's nothing locked in yet, but that is the hope, right?
You said that. I didn't.
Okay. That's what I keep hearing. And people keep messaging me going, this is streaming, right? So I was like, I don't know. I know they want it to be, but I know there's a lot involved in streaming something. And I know it's not just, hey, let's somebody hold their damn phone up and Facebook Live it. You know, there's a lot happening there. So the best way to see it though, Randy, don't wait around to see if it's going to stream. Get you some tickets. And
absolutely. I'm not denying that we're working on it. I'm not denying that at all. But the best way to do this, people, without a doubt in the world, especially around Tennessee, whether it's Nashville or Memphis, whether it's in Arkansas, or you're coming from Alabama, no matter where you are, you need to come. Because as Gene said, a lot of these, you'll never see this group of people in the same building again, ever. You will never see this again, ever, folks. Because, and I haven't talked a lot about this, Gene, and I got to find other notes. But what's neat is that part of this will be a fan fest type of deal, from 4:30 to 6. Really excited about having a lot of vendors with all kinds of wrestling stuff. We got Mark James with Mark James books and Mark James posters and programs and all that kind of stuff. His buddy from Memphis, Brian Webb, will have a table as well. Gene Jackson will have a table featuring the Doug Gilbert podcast and everything you do. We hope to have David Milliken there with all the great belts that David does. Our buddy that has written and published artwork for a great wrestling comment book, Scott Middleton from Scott's Art. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not.
Absolutely. He does great work.
He will be there as well. My show, my podcast, Talking Memphis Wrestling Table, will be there. A guy from Missouri, I'll mispronounce this guy, Alvin Minnick. Do you know Alvin?
I do know Alvin Minnick.
He will be in the house. Also, Pat Rose will have his book. He has From Wrestling to Fly Fishing. He has his new book, and Camden will have his as well. Got two guys from Jonesboro, Darren Melton. Obviously, Darren and Scott Bainey will be in Jackson, and they have not just necessarily wrestling stuff. There'll be wrestling stuff and all kinds of stuff. My friend Rodney Hanna might be there from Jonesboro, just a ton of people. And you can still, folks, get a vendor table. You can get a vendor table. Again, somebody that's helping me promote this show, like Gene, without charging him for a table. However, other people, we are charging for a table. And for a vendor table, if you're interested, folks, it's $75 per table. And I did some research, and that's pretty normal for that. And I think
it's very fair price. It's actually a little low compared to what a lot of these, a lot of people, bare minimum is like 100 and above. So that's a fair price, especially for the amount of people that's going to be coming through, potential customers and people. So yeah,
it will be just a great event there. So the wrestling fans has this opportunity to talk to and associate with other wrestling fans. I'm one of them. I'll be out there associating with fellow wrestling fans as well. Excited about it. Hope to meet everybody. Come out and say hello. I'll say this one more business thing, folks. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. Also, my email address is, maybe you have trouble because it's not normal. I have to throw my middle name in there. It's Randy Benton, Benton, Hales. Randy Benton Hales at gmail.com. Randy Benton Hales at gmail.com. If you're interested in a vendor table, write me at that address. I'm sure if you follow Gene, and you can make a comment on this YouTube page, and he will answer that comment and put it up there as well. And we'll answer your question, but we really want you, as there it is, Randy Benton Hales at gmail.com. Man, if you have any questions about this event, if you want a vendor table, and are you excited about the fact to see what everybody's selling? And of course, the wrestlers will have their own tables as well. PG, rock and roll, hence everybody will have their stuff. It'll be a ton of place. You can Christmas shop early in September, Gene.
Oh yeah, if you're a wrestling fan or you have a family member that's a wrestling fan, you will be able to do some major Christmas shopping at this thing from the great vendors. And like I said, then all the wrestlers, they're going to have their pictures and shirts and you name it, they're going to have it there. And I'm so excited, Randy. Let me tell you something. Thank you for coming on and doing this podcast. Thank you for letting me be a part of this event. And the fan in me, getting to see, all these guys that I grew up watching that I'm such a fan of, and getting to be there and sharing the moment of them going into the Hall of Fame, knowing what it means to all of them, knowing what it means to us fans and you and everybody. It's just going to be a tremendous night. And hey, 5 hours over there from Alabama, 5 hours back, it's a small price to pay. I wouldn't miss it for the world.
What I want to do right now, let me get set here. Okay, here we go. I want you to after I explain this, I want you to then put the poster back up there. Folks, this is called a go home promo. This, even though it's over a month out, this is a selling ticket promo. This is it. This is a go home promo. And here we go. It's a night to remember. It is September the 21st. It's in Jackson, Tennessee at the Picture Perfect Event Center at 2310 North Highland Drive in Jackson, Tennessee. You will see the night to remember, the Memphis Wrestling Hall of Fame, class of 2024. You see some of the names on the poster. Everybody on the poster, at the top part of the poster, will be there as well. You will see the KAW and the Power Pro Wrestling reunion. You will see the rivalry of a lifetime, a special presentation and tribute to the greatest wrestling feud in the history of the world. Some of you might say Dusty and Flair. Some of you old farts might say the Sheik and Bobo Brazil. This old fart will say, without a doubt, Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee. Look at all the community in Jackson, Tennessee at the bottom of that. News Talk, Thomas Media, Lawyer Office, Doctor's Office, Budweiser, the Slide and Ride Rodeo, helped out by KC Gold and Tennessee Championship Wrestling, all Channel 7 television, and Bourbon. What does that say? Bourbon and what? Bottom.
I don't have my glasses on.
All right, can't see it, but you can figure out. It is a night to remember. See that QR code right there in the middle of that poster? Take your phone out. Open your phone up. Point it at that QR code, and it will take you directly to the ticket website. If that don't work for you, go to Memphis Wrestling HallOfFame.com, and it directly sends you immediately to that. Ticket prices. Let me tell you the options of ticket prices. Front row, platinum VIP, front row tickets. There's 75 of them. You can see everything. You have a front row seat to the stage. $75 plus ticket fees, $75 first row. Then that will get you into the meet and greet. That will get you into the Hall of Fame. That will get you into the Lawler Dundee ceremony, the KEW Power Pro deal. That'll get you into everything, the $75 tickets. And if you buy that, you don't have to wait in line at the concession stand. You don't have to wait in line at the merchandise stand. It's just tremendous. That's $75. Second row ticket that includes everything as well, except you'll still have to wait in line, but it'll get you into all the events. It's $65. Third row and back is general admission ticket. If you buy that general admission to the whole event, that is $45. There more. There goes. There, I keep coming on that fuck. I'm getting a fight here with the camera, but it's very important for me to say this right now. There's other options, folks.
Yes.
If you just want to see the meet and greet only, greet only from back 3:30 to 6. 3:30 to 6. I said 4 earlier. It's 3:30 to 6. Meet and greet only, $25. If you want to see the Hall of Fame ceremony and the Lawler Dundee tribute, $25 only. So they are cheaper ways. Certainly not as good as seats, and you don't quite get to see everything there is to do, but certainly I think it's a good deal. When you go to wrestling events all over, this isn't overpriced. I researched this as well.
No, I've been going to wrestling conventions for years. When they announced the prices, I was like, wow, that is especially $75 for everything. That's amazing. But like you said, there's something to meet every budget. Hey, if you don't have $75 right now, all the way down to $25, you can still get in there. You still can do the meet and greet, or you can see the Hall of Fame. You want to be a part of this. If you don't, I mean, I want to be there for all of it, but hey, at the very least, either get in there and meet and greet some of these guys, or be there for the Hall of Fame. But you're going to kick yourself if you miss it, because like we say, it's not going to come around. Not to be morbid or anything, but just fact of the matter, this opportunity is not going to come around again to see all these guys in one place.
Night to remember, September the 21st in Jackson, Tennessee. Again, folks, if you want vendor tables, email me. If you have any questions at all about this event, just email me at randybentonhales@gmail.com. Randy bentonhales@gmail.com. I would love you to comment on feedback from if you enjoyed the show. I know Gene, who was the very first, I think it's ironic that the very first podcast I ever did in my life before I knew what podcast was Gene. And here we are. You know, I told you earlier, we're 3 hours now, 3 hours and 20 minutes after my bedtime. I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to work. And so this has been worth it. This was fun. This is exciting. I can't wait till I'm invited to come back and do this show again and do Doug Gilbert's show. So excited about that. I'm so excited to see you and everybody watching your show today. Folks, MemphisWrestlingHallOfFame.com. Best way to go get tickets, and would love for you to come shake our hands and see us. Email me at that address, and excited about it. Gene, thanks a lot, man. This was
Randy,
a blast, and we went more than an hour.
We went more than an hour, but listen, this was a Memphis wrestling show, so I'm fixing to bring you up on the screen by yourself. There's only one proper way to take this home. There's only one proper way to wrap this up. I'm going to leave it to you, folks. As Randy Hales takes us away, we can't wait to see you in Jackson, Tennessee on September 21st.
What a wild and really exciting show. We'll do it again next time on Retro Memphis Wrestling for Gene Jackson. I am the owner, founder, and president of Power Pro Wrestling. I am Randy Hales. For both of us, we say bye-bye, everybody.
This is Wrestling Nostalgia, the podcast that dives into wrestling history. Hey, wrestling fans, I'm Dave Dynasty, and if you enjoy podcasts that are knowledgeable and history-driven, then Wrestling Nostalgia is for you. With great guests and fun interviews, there are over 200 episodes in our archives. We chat with several first-time guests and often cover topics not discussed on other podcasts. Look up Wrestling Nostalgia on your favorite podcast platform and visit all of our links at linktree/wrestlepod. That is linktr.ee/RASSLEPOD. And remember, wherever you go, whatever you do, be good, be safe, and keep on growing.